Hello, this is Dating for Widows and Widowers. It's a more widow-specific dating class. I presented this at the St. George Conference just recently here in January of 2020. I am your host, Sharon Collier. I am a mom, the mother of 4 adult children who are really fun. I'm a widow of 13 years. I'm a certified life coach and I focus mostly on people who are dating again, like myself. And I am a self-proclaimed former bad dater. I put myself out there and made every possible mistake that I could. And I had to figure out why. So this happened around year 7. I've been researching love and attraction and dating for the last 6 years or so, and this is what I am sharing with you today, my research. The objective is to better understand yourself as a widow or widower in your dating experience. Okay, let's jump right in. When is it okay to start dating? So we're going to talk a little about widow fog, because widow fog and big decisions just don't mix. So let's talk about grief and the brain. This picture shows that it would affect our concentration, planning, organization, completing tasks. I'm sure everyone listening to this has been through this. Most of it you can see is in the frontal lobe. A few of it is in the middle of your brain, where you have memory and recall. So I thought this was really cute, and it actually kind of explains it well. Um, on the left side, this is your brain. The eggs say sunny side up, dude, it's a beautiful day. The strawberries, life is sweet. Down at the bottom, my cup runneth over. Okay, our normal functioning brain. And on the right side, this is your brain on grief. Sorry, ma'am, scrambled is all we've got. And the frontal lobe, the little small space, is our cognitive ability left over to get dressed, write a grocery list, drive to the store, except that you can only pick one. So many of you have probably gone through this. You can relate. Widow fog is, of course, in our frontal cortex, where all the important things happen. It's responsible for our understanding, decision making, inhibitions, and logic. It only processes one thing at a time. So grief brain actually overloads your frontal cortex by forcing it to process too much information, so it fails to think rationally to try to make sense of your emotions. So pretty much your emotions take over and have fogged your logic, understanding, decision making, and inhibitions. Some other physical side effects of grief are disrupted sleep, loss of appetite, increased appetite, fatigue, loss of concentration, hormone imbalances, anxiety, and depression. Now, aren't you fun? I don't know about anybody else, but it took me 4 years, I think, to sleep through the night. And the hormone imbalances, I lost my thyroid function and my adrenals before even the first anniversary. So these are really something to be aware of and to get taken care of. Then let's add single parent stress. Stress does interesting things to us. Deep in our brain is our hypothalamus, and it's in charge of our endocrine system, our hormones. It's also a big factor in our pheromonal response, which we will talk about later. But our hypothalamus talks to our adrenals and pancreas, and we produce cortisol. So cortisol is added sugar in our bloodstream, which makes us have sugar cravings. And actually, if you feed yourself sugar, it actually satisfies the cortisol. There's usually weight gain, usually around the middle, and there's rounding of the face, acne, easy bruising, slowed healing, and fatigue. So not only are we a mess emotionally, but physically, there's some symptoms as well. So there is no such thing as a grief dating profile, But if you've seen an online profile, there's an About Me section. So during Widow Fog, before we're really ready to date, this is what your About Me section would probably say if you were being completely honest. Newly widowed Latter-day Saint looking for someone to fill the hole in my heart. I can't decide what I do for fun or even what to make for dinner. Don't take it personal if I'm cranky. I haven't had a good night's sleep since my spouse passed. I'll probably talk about my late spouse a lot because they were perfect and you need to measure up. I really can't think straight, but if you feed me sugar, I'll probably like you. So how do you know when you have a grasp on your grief? You're no longer bursting into tears at random unexpected moments. I have to tell you, on a date, that's probably a big mood killer. You don't need to drop your honey's name all the time or talk about the fact that your husband just died. One of my girlfriends joked that she was in the drive-thru at McDonald's ordering a Diet Coke. I need a Diet Coke, please. Oh, and did you know my husband died? You can process information and repeat it back. That's always a good thing. You can have several tasks going on at the same time. Maybe you can put a load of laundry in and then go do the dishes. Maybe you can do all that while the TV's on. You can have several things going on at the same time. You have a normal routine. I'm going to say your quote unquote new normal. Okay. This section, I don't want to offend anybody because desperation has a negative connotation to it. But as widows and widowers, I'm going to say I've watched it over and over and over again. That tunnel vision that you need to remarry and focus on nothing else. I'm going to call that desperation. I'm just going to tell you desperate people make bad decisions. I'm going to talk about desperation a little bit. We might be desperate because being married is your normal and you did not choose to be single. And that may give you this tunnel vision that I hear about so much that you need to be married again. You feel exceptionally lonely. You miss daily validation from your spouse. I've got a cute girlfriend who put on 20 pounds while her spouse was dying of cancer, and he told her, well, this should be your new goal weight because you look fantastic. So our spouses have a way of validating us every day, even if it's not a general compliment, but even a daily kiss, hello, or goodbye, things like that validate us. There's a hole in your heart that you feel like you can fill with someone else. And I always say that hole in our heart never closes or gets filled, really. We just adjust to it being there. So know that somebody else cannot fill that hole in your heart, but they can add to your happiness. You lack the confidence to make decisions on your own. You need to be making decisions on your own and liking your decisions, being okay with your decisions. And you don't feel like you have an identity without your spouse. And I put that on there because that was me. I thought I'm a wife and a mother, and I just need to be a wife and a mother again without feeling like I had any identity at all, which I ended up changing. Okay, this is much better in person. I demonstrated some lonely people or what lonely people might do. This is a guy and a girl meeting for the first time. The girl says, "You are much more attractive than your picture." The guy, "I find you very attractive as well." Girl, "Thank you. So tell me, what do you like to do for fun?" Guy, "Oh, stuff." Girl, "Me too. Awesome." Guy, "How do you feel about eating?" Girl, "I like it. Do it every day." Guy, "Crazy. Me too." Girl, "Water?" Guy, "Love it." Girl, "Crazy. We have so much in common." Guy, "How do you feel about road trips?" Girl, "Ooh, not so much. More of a homebody." Guy, "That's okay. We have other stuff in common. Maybe we should just kiss a lot to pass the time." Girl, "Okay." So this was my cute little demonstration on maybe two people who are lonely, who can't figure out anything in common. And a lot of times people do just kiss a lot to pass the time. So combating desperation, you would work hard to find your new normal. have your life running like a well-oiled machine, as they say. Becoming someone you really like. I did not figure this out until year 7. I'm not going to be a wife. I am a mom, but I can have an identity on my own. I went out and tried a whole bunch of things. I went to a singles dance and stayed the whole time. I went rock climbing. I did paddle boarding. I tried all these things that I had never ever even thought of trying before. And I became someone I really liked. I was having a lot of fun and was just really liking my life. Having goals and plans for the future, even if your plans for the future are a trip with your kids, but hopefully you have goals. Hopefully you want to get from point A to point B, whatever that is, to improve your life. Finding new hobbies and interests. I went and did that. Hopefully you will too. Makes you an interesting person. And then being in a good place with your grief, of course. So I say, always be working towards your best self. If you are working hard at becoming your best self, hopefully you will find someone striving to be their best self and you can be best selves together. Okay, something else I hear in the widow world is the expectations. You are going to be dating and marrying someone probably entirely different from your spouse. This is something you should probably get used to early. Like, let's wrap your brain around it because you cannot compare. Everyone is different. And you know what? You're going to be different from somebody else's spouse. So you need to keep that in mind as well. Here's our little demonstration break on expectations. Here we have two lovely couples. Peter is married to Patricia and Douglas is married to Diana. Peter says, "My precious Patricia, aren't our lives just perfect?" Patricia answers, "Perfectly peachy, my perfect Peter." Then Douglas says, "My darling Diana, I think our life together is dandy." Diana replies, "Dang dreamy, my dashing Douglas." But sadly, perfect Peter passed away and darling Diana died. But Douglas and Patricia found love again in each other. Douglas, "Patricia, pairing off with you would be pure paradise." Patricia, "Douglas, doubling up with you would be divine. I will be delightfully devoted." But then one day something strange happened. Douglas says, "Patricia, my precious, your pepperoni pizza was perfection." Debonair Douglas, deep dish just for you. Would you be divine and dash the disposables out to the dumpster? Douglas replies, "Pretty Patricia, I cannot. That pungent project tickles my gag and I could possibly puke." Patricia, "Douglas, my dreamboat, my perfect Peter always did the disposing of the degradables." Douglas, "Well, I feel perfectly pitiful." On another day, Patricia says, "Dearest Douglas, your birthday is coming. I would like to dish you a dessert that is devilishly delicious." Douglas replies, "Patricia, my pet, it would be positively paramount if you could put on a party." Patricia, "Dapper Douglas, I have never dished dinner and dessert for dozens. It sounds daunting and I doubt I could do it." Douglas replies, "Perky Patricia, my darling Diana always planned the perfect party for me and my pussy." Patricia, "Dang, I feel dumb." So this was just a goofy portrayal of our expectations. You're not going to get somebody the same. I feel bad. I did not video this at the conference because my dating again players were perfectly on point with this. So letting go of expectations, you need to be open-minded. You really do need to realize they're going to be different. And maybe online, search outside your ideal anyways to kind of do that on purpose. Give someone different a few chances. I used to tell my kids when they were growing up, if they didn't like dinner, they had to take 3 bites of it before they could go make themselves a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So I'm telling you to, if someone's different and you don't think it's a thing, maybe give them a couple of chances just to make sure. And communicate about your differences and expectations. This might take a little getting used to. This is really different than what I'm normally used to. So communication is really a good thing in this case as well. Okay, Know your enemies, red flags, and other dating hazards. Let's talk red flags. Scammers. Scammers are out there. Scammers know that widows are vulnerable. They know about uh, widow fog. And also, they are probably going to ask you about life insurance. They know that widows usually have money. So a scammer will want to rush into a relationship. They will say, I love you too soon, probably even before you meet in person. I hear over and over again about how people quote unquote fall in love online. I will actually disprove falling in love online. Will ask you or might ask you to keep the relationship a secret. And they would ask you for money, but maybe sometimes in not an obvious way. Maybe hint around about not having enough money to do one thing or another, or they would take you out if they had more money to get you to pay, or just money and scammers are usually hand in hand, and that would come up. I was buying a car, and the finance guy was telling me how his mother fell in love online, and the guy was going to come see her from out of the country, but got caught in customs in Sacramento and needed her to send him $2,500 right away to meet him. And of course, when she told her kids, the kids were like, absolutely not. You know, he was a total scammer, but they are very, very sneaky. Will give you lots of personal information about themselves and hope that you will spill a bunch of personal information about yourself. This actually happened to me. This guy just completely open book, just barfed out all his divorce details, his life details, his family, and I was like, okay, wow, we're playing open book. But he actually got me to tell him the street that I lived on, my mother's maiden name. In a matter of 15, 20 minutes, I had spilled all my security questions, I'm sure. And his scam was actually eBay, so he was trying to get passwords out of me so that he could do his little eBay scams. Okay, will be charming and give you an abnormal amount of compliments. If someone is just gushing and gushing and gushing, there's something wrong. You know who you are, you know where your strong points are. If somebody's complimenting things that aren't true, things like that, it's probably a scammer. And they are usually too good to be true, which is definitely the case. If you can't find something wrong with them, then that's a bad thing. Other red flags and bad behaviors. So there are bad behaviors and red flags that are negotiable and non-negotiable. If you can talk to someone about a problem, about a bad behavior, and it changes for an extended amount of time, then that is probably a negotiable bad behavior or red flag. Non-negotiable is when you approach somebody about a problem or a bad behavior and they turn it around to you, or they apologize and it never changes, and we're going to talk about some of that in a second. Okay, general red flags that are fairly easy to identify. Of course, we're not going to put up with lying, cheating, someone being disrespectful, lazy, no compatibility. Let's not force a relationship when there is no compatibility. No job or plan for the future. Literally, you marry who you date. And so if you're dating someone who has no plan for the future or no job, that is a red flag. And you find yourself always complaining. This is a red flag because listen to yourself. Maybe even if you're complaining a lot, write it down so you can actually look at it. You shouldn't be always complaining about a relationship. Okay, this is what I would call medium red flags. This is normally a person with a low investment level, but not always. Some people will have these red flags, and if you just said, well, I would really appreciate meeting your family, you could. But for the most part, if there's several of these, it is a person with low investment level. Now, I'm going to call these, negotiable red flags. But the low investment level person is not somebody you necessarily dump. It is just someone that you don't put a lot of time into and that you don't wait around for. The low investment level person could be really fun and you could have a good time with them while you're dating other people as well. So let's get started. You feel like you are putting more into the relationship than they are. You're the one always asking to see them rather than them always asking to see you. Or you're the one, reaching out first thing in the morning before they do, or they never do. Um, you feel like the backup plan, not the plan. They will make plans for the weekend that include their family or their friends and not necessarily you. You're just kind of always the backup plan. Frequent canceling, you feel like you were very low on the um, totem pole as far as their time. Frequent canceling usually means they found better plans. Little to no communication throughout the day. Have you ever had somebody take a whole day to respond to your text? A lot of times, you're just not a priority. Won't introduce you to friends and family, probably because they just don't think that it's ever going to be a thing to do that, so that you don't meet their friends and family. Um, they treat you like a dying plant. You only get watered when you're drooping. So when you complain, hey, I never ever see you, they will give you a little bit just to keep you alive or just to keep you around on the back burner because they probably really do enjoy you. You're just not high on the priority totem pole. Okay, serious red flags. This is do not proceed. This is usually somebody who is emotionally unavailable, they're emotionally bruised, they are mentally incapacitated a little bit. The narcissists, the sociopaths, if they display a lot of these, you can guarantee that that's what you're dealing with. Not everybody is that. In fact, very few people are really narcissists or sociopaths, but these are serious red flags that you should be aware of that this is bad behavior you do not put up with. Someone who tries to control you, someone who tries to tell you what you can and cannot do. Someone that will seclude you from family and friends. Maybe you can't see the red flags, but they know that your family and friends can, and so they will try to keep you away from that. They can be super charming one minute and then mean the next. Maybe they're charming in front of people and then mean in private. Will turn things around so it appears to be your fault. This is something that you wouldn't be able to complain about to them. You wouldn't be able to say, hey, this is bad behavior, because they would just turn it around so it's your fault. Will try to knock you down a few notches if you are succeeding. They will always try to be the one on top. So someone who loves you will be your best cheerleader and not try to knock you down a few notches. So just keep that in mind. If you feel like you're being knocked down or that your successes aren't being celebrated, this is a big red flag. Will manipulate you to stretch your boundaries. We're going to talk about boundaries. No means no, and if they're trying to manipulate you to stretch that, that is a large red flag. Will give you a really good apology, but their behavior never changes. Some people have a beautiful apology, but it's not really an apology unless their behavior does change. And they will make you question yourself or just not like yourself. I was married to this. I questioned myself constantly, and I ended up making some pretty poor decisions about myself, which really did affect my dating. My self-esteem was not high enough to really date a quality person. So if you're questioning yourself or you just don't like yourself around a person, that is an enormous red flag. Jeffrey R. Holland, this comes from the best. This isn't just a dating coach who studied, this is the best of the best, right? In a dating or courtship relationship, I would not have you spend 5 minutes with someone who belittles you, one who is constantly critical, one who is cruel at your expense and may even call it humor. Life is tough enough without having the person who is supposed to love you lead the assault on your self-esteem, sense of dignity, your confidence, or your joy. Okay, so I surveyed some widows and widowers before last May's conference, hoping to get some advice. These are people that have been married and divorced since their spouses have passed, and I asked them what they might do differently. And this is what they said. This was the top one. They didn't take enough time to really get to know the other person. They just rushed into it. They were positive they were in love. They rushed into it and did not know the other person at all. They didn't take enough time to get to know the kids. We love our kids, but they can be complicated in blending families. They didn't take enough time letting the kids get to know each other. They didn't take enough time with a long distance relationship. Now, long distance relationships are hard because everything is fun and games. You're not going to tell somebody in a long distance relationship, well, while I'm at work, will you do the wash and clean the house and make sure the kids are fed? You know, it's kind of fantasy land time when you're in a long distance relationship, and you really do need to take more time and see who the person really is. They didn't listen to family and friends, also their kids who didn't like their spouse. And that's important because a lot of times they can see things that we can't because we're right in the middle of it. They picked the first person that was interested in them because they didn't think someone else would come along. Now, we've talked about like the scarcity mentality a little bit here and there. You know, the statistics say there's one guy for every 8 women. And I think it's more like one for every 20, but Um, that is not a reason to get involved with someone if there's red flags, if you just think there's no one else coming along. You know, live a really good, fun life so that you're not in that place where you think that, you know, you need to pair off quickly because no one else is going to come along. They picked the first person because they were excited not to be lonely anymore. This felt like the hole in their heart was being filled, and so they jumped at it. And married someone unemployed who never wanted to get a job. Again, you marry who you date. If they're not wanting to work and progress in life while you're dating, they're not going to really want to do that while you're married, especially if you're taking care of them. And they didn't check a criminal record. Literally, it's $10. And I'm not saying you need to do this with everyone you date, but if you're starting to get serious, check the criminal record, see really who they are. If they don't have a criminal record, that doesn't mean they are a stellar person. It just means they haven't been caught. So just that's why we watch the red flags. But most likely, if they don't have a criminal record, it's because they're not committing crimes. Okay, next section. Know the whats and whys of your feelings. Why can love feel so good and hurt so bad? Let's talk. Let's talk attraction hormones. Hopefully, knowing what's going on can kind of help us keep ourselves in check. Our dopamine is an attachment hormone. It makes us feel attached to somebody. It's also an anticipation hormone. I say it's like the difference between having an ice cream cone or going to get an ice cream cone. Sometimes the going to get is far more exciting than actually having, and that's our dopamine at work. It's also stimulates the same part of our brain as addiction. So dopamine can actually make us feel addicted to someone. So oftentimes after a breakup, we start feeling like we really want to go back to this person, a little addicted, maybe, um, or maybe we think the red flags aren't so bad because our dopamine is hard at work telling us that we're might be addicted to this person. So just something to keep in mind after a breakup when you think it's, you know, maybe I should go back. A lot of times it's our dopamine at work. Oxytocin is another attachment hormone. Women who nurse babies flood with oxytocin. This makes us attached to our children. But oxytocin also floods when we are affectionate. Hugging, kissing, hand holding. If we're extra lonely, hand holding can make us flood oxytocin. So something else to be aware of. This is what makes my guy friends ask me, why when I kiss a lady is she thinking we're getting married? And women actually flood 3 times more oxytocin than men. This is why he's thinking, woo woo, I just kissed someone, and she's thinking, oh my gosh, I'm in love, or, you know, we better go pick out rings. So oxytocin is very powerful as well. Serotonin is what we produce in our brains. Too much makes us anxious, anxiety, and not enough, it can cause depression. In fact, a lot of people who suffer from depression when they're in love would tell a person, you make me happier than I've ever felt before. This is the truth because all the attraction and love feelings make us produce more serotonin. Endorphins, that's what we create when we work out. But all those exciting love hormones can also create endorphins and they feel good. And norepinephrine is actually that swelling in your chest that makes you feel like your heart is so full it's going to burst. And they actually give norepinephrine to people with low blood pressure to raise their blood pressure up a little bit. But all these hormones mixed together make us feel euphoric, and it's more attraction than love. It can be mistaken for love, and which I will explain later. Okay, attraction, attachment, infatuation, and love. Do you know the difference? More detail. Attraction is the physical chemistry we feel. It's a pheromonal response. And I'm going to use the word smell. It's like when you like somebody else's smell, it comes in through our nose and it tickles our hypothalamus. And that's where we get our pheromonal response from. It's also a visual response, that feeling when you look across the room and see somebody attractive and it makes you want to burst into song. This is all attraction. Our pheromonal response is often discounted when we're really, really, really attracted to somebody. It feels good, and we often mistake that for love when it's actually just an extreme attraction. Attachment is a little more involved. That's our oxytocin and dopamine at work. We talked about this. It's brought on by affection. Even sometimes just even holding hands when we're deprived of affection, even holding hands can make us release a lot of oxytocin, or hugging. They've actually proved that hugging for an extended amount of time makes us release some really good chemicals. So we need to be aware of that. Spending a lot of time with somebody and getting really comfortable with someone can make us feel like we're really attached. I dated a man sort of for 5 years, and I called him the old recliner. I was just very comfortable with him. He knew all my flaws and faults. I didn't have to like get to know somebody else and their flaws and faults, and he was just very comfortable. And so we just kind of settled into this relationship that went nowhere. It was in no different place at month one than it was at year one or year five. And so, but we were very attached, and when he moved on, it was hurtful, um, because of the attachment hormones. But it is often mistaken for love as well. Infatuation. Infatuation happens when we're extremely lonely, when we think we need some attention and validation, or the need for excitement. We're just really bored. And widows, actually, with our big old hole in our heart, are actually more prone to fall into infatuation. It is feelings of excitement, attraction, and attachment. It's our serotonin and norepinephrine at work. We get that swell in our chest and we're absolutely positive we're in love. It makes us feel as though we're in love, but it usually dies off at 4 to 5 months. So when somebody says, I just want one big piece of advice for dating, my one big piece would be wait till after the 4 to 5 months is over before you make a commitment, because it can die off really fast. In high school, I dated several boys, and we'd pair off and be exclusive. And around month 4, um, I all of a sudden thought they smelled bad or their hair was weird, and I was a good 4 month person. Most of my relationships in high school lasted 4 months because it was really infatuation and it just dropped off. But of course, a couple weeks later, the dopamine was hard at work, making me think that, oh, I need to get back together with them, only to get back together with them to have it die off in a couple weeks again. So we need to be aware of infatuation. It is not love. We need to take our time, 4 to 5 months before any kind of commitment. Now, love, people ask me, what is the difference between like a serious attachment and love? And so one of my girlfriends had actually asked, and I said, well, tell me why you love me. And she goes, why I love you? I said, well, of course. And she gave me a whole bunch of compliments that made my head swell really big. And then I said, after I stopped her, I said, now add attraction to that. So when you are in love, it is attraction, it's attachment, but it's also admiration, respect, support, and effort. You have to admire specific things about people. When I ask people in a coaching session, what do you like about this person? And they tell me, oh, we have so much fun together. That is not admiration. You should be able to say, I love that they're so intelligent. I love that they read books like I do. I love that they like water skiing and water sports like I do. I love that they came from a family of 12 kids. I love that they're my same religion. It should be a lot of things. Also, respect, support, and effort. If someone is abusive to you and claim that they love you, this is false. They might think they love you, but if they do not show you any respect, if they're not supporting you and they're not putting effort in, this is not real love. So you need to be aware of that when someone's telling you that they love you and they're not behaving properly. So this is more of what love is, if we can explain it. Um, and it's all the components. It's not just some, it's all of them. Okay, guidelines for a better dating experience. This is all guidelines according to Sharon. Okay, setting clear boundaries. So boundaries are your rules. There's no right rules, there's no wrong rules. They are your rules. They are your rules to keep, and they need to be set before you start your dating process. They can be anything from how many people you'll date at a time, your curfew, the time the affection starts. Maybe you'd want to wait till date 5. Maybe you'll wait till date 3. This is your boundaries. You know, maybe one of your boundaries is when a date can meet your children. Anything that you need to put in place that are your rules. Sticking to healthy boundaries shows good self-esteem. You teach people how to treat you, and you do not need to put up with bad behavior. So people with good self-esteem are actually less prone to scammers. A scammer will sniff out someone with low self-esteem, somebody whose boundaries can be pushed, um, and they kind of tend to leave a strong personality or someone with strong self-esteem alone because they know that they're not going to get very far. So just keep in mind that no means no. That really does show good self-esteem if you can stick to your boundaries. Boundaries are a good way to see how much someone really cares for you. If someone respects you, they will honor your boundaries. So one of my boundaries, even though I was in my early 40s, was that I had to be home by midnight. I had a teenage daughter who waited up for me, and she would have been waiting up till 2 in the morning if I stayed out till 2 in the morning. So I made midnight my curfew. And, you know, nothing good happens after midnight anyways, right? So I dated one guy who was constantly trying to get me to stay out later. You know, we just went and saw a movie. We didn't even get to talk. Like, let's just spend another half an hour and just talk or kiss or whatever. Where another guy I dated had me home at 11:55 every single time. And so I knew that he really respected my boundaries. Okay, boundaries are only boundaries if you stick to them. Otherwise, they're only words. No means no, and if you're going to stretch some of your boundaries, someone is going to know that most likely you will stretch all of your boundaries. So if you stick to your boundaries, there's no question. Just remember that no means no. Okay, take your time. Of course, we talked about the infatuation period. Take your time to get past the 4 to 5 month infatuation period. Okay, take your time to identify red flags. Some people, well, most people, we're dating, we're on our best behavior, right? You have to take time to identify red flags for people to let their guard down or show you who they really are. Doesn't mean they're all going to be terrible. It just means that there are some behaviors that you might have to decide if you can deal with or not. For instance, my dad met my mom in January and married her in April. Well, my mother to this day is a psycho at Christmas time. She, for whatever reason, does not like Christmas. It's her goal to ruin everybody's Christmas. No one wants mom for Christmas. She hates Christmas. We don't know why. She will never admit that she hates Christmas, but she likes to ruin Christmas. Maybe that is something that dad would have liked to have known before he married mom. Maybe it wouldn't have been a deal breaker, but it would have probably been nice for him to know. So take time to identify our red flags. Take time to learn how to communicate. So communication is such a big deal and everybody talks about it. Nobody wants to offend anybody, and so we tend to walk on eggshells or tend to excuse some bad behaviors. But what we really need to be doing is communicating. And so I like to tell people to learn how to communicate while you're dating. Decide while you're dating how you are going to resolve conflicts. Maybe you speak two different languages and it's hard for you to understand each other. And I don't mean like one's Spanish and one's English. You just express yourself in a different way. And so learning how to deal with that when you're dating would make a relationship or a marriage much easier. Take time to figure out triggers and how they handle them. So we are talking whether someone is widowed or divorced, we're talking about injured people. And everybody has little triggers that make them a little crazy or make them, you know, display some bad behaviors. So we need to find out what some triggers are and how they handle them. And this is a time thing. This takes time. I mean, you can ask people. If someone were to ask me, I don't like to be told that I'm irrational. My husband used to tell me I was irrational all the time. He suffered from depression quite badly and was always in with therapists and, you know, one therapist after another. And so he took on some languages from the therapist, but he would tell me often that if I did anything that he didn't like, I was irrational. That's one of my triggers. I don't like those words. You are irrational. And I would tell somebody, please don't ever say that to me. You know, if I am being irrational or displaying irrational behavior, please use different words. That is one of my triggers. It makes me want to explode. So make sure you take time to find out what the triggers and how the person handles them. Okay, take time to see them in their natural life, especially like in long distance relationships. You need to see how they're reacting with your kids, reacting with their kids. Do they let their garbage pile up to the point that their house smells? Of course, everybody's on their best behavior when you're dating, but you need to see them in their natural life. That takes some time. Okay, take time to see spending and saving habits. This is definitely something you need to see. I have one brother who spends too much money and another brother who is the extreme saver. You need to know this. If you are a spender and are married to an extreme saver, you need to know this in advance that your spending habits are probably going to come to a halt, you know, because of this extreme saver. Okay, if you can't find anything wrong with a person, maybe wait around until you can. Then decide if you can deal with it. Very important to decide if you can deal with it. Okay, Sharon's big C's of relationships. Chemistry, that is our initial attraction. That's what makes you want to date someone in the first place. Courtship is spending time together. That's a good thing, right? Lots of time. Connection. This is the glue. This is what my big promotion is. Have connection. Find the connection, the things you have in common, your religion, your hobbies, life goals, views on raising kids, etc. This is where you want to be saying, oh, I like this person because they like water sports, they like climbing mountains, they like camping, just like I do. You need the connection, you need the things in common because this is the glue that holds it together. So I promote this to find the connection before you start the physical contact, all the kissing and the affection, because we know that is euphoric and it gives us a false sense of love. So if we know that we have connection before the kissing starts, I feel like that is an advantage in the whole process. Then, of course, conflict resolution and communication. We just talked about that a little bit. You know, how well do you work through problems with each other and can you handle it? Can you handle the way the other person is handling things? I tell people, you know, before you get married, have a good fight or a good conflict and make sure you resolve it so you know how the other person deals with it, or sit down and decide how you're going to deal with that. And I have this lower on the list because a lot of times people forget that that's a thing because they're so happy and they're so in love and things are clicking so well together that you forget that you really do need to learn how to communicate and resolve conflicts. And then, of course, commitment is the last one. Okay, we are at the end of our video. If it all sounds daunting and complicated, it really isn't. Hopefully, you're going to just meet somebody and it clicks and things will just work out. Um, or hopefully, if it's not clicking, you have all this information in your back pocket for when it isn't working and you can identify why it's not working. So my last little piece of advice is to have fun with this. Have fun with dating. Don't take it all too serious. Do not have that tunnel vision that makes you say, I just have to be married. Um, Maybe date several people so you know the qualities that you really like in somebody and the qualities that you really don't like in somebody. And find the adventure in dating. See this as an adventure, not a chore. As soon as it's a chore, maybe pull back and stop dating for a minute and do some fun things for yourself or with your kids or whatever. And learn from your mistakes. If you're constantly doing the same thing over and over and over again and it's not working, then change things up. If you're making mistakes and you can see them, that's the best. So you can change the behaviors or the way that you're doing things. Okay, I am on YouTube as Dating Again. I am on Facebook as Dating Again. Instagram is dating.again. Or you could set up an appointment for coaching at lovingagaincoach.com. And it also has my business line if you need to get in contact with me. Thank you for watching and good luck out there.